So, I'll start. I have to stand on this side because of the beamer.
Read already?
So, I work for a program called Amsterdam Smart City. I'll introduce a little bit about the program itself a little later on. But first I'll start why we're doing it. Because we think we need to do it different. It's not really clear, but this is Amsterdam, it's the city center, the inside. We think we need to look different at our city from a different perspective. Some facts are in there. You see there's a high level of connectivity. There's a very high level in Amsterdam on highly educated people who come to the city, which is a very nice aspect. This is a worrying thing. You see it with, for example, Philips as well, who's now splitting up his lighting division. If you look at 60% is over 65, that's within the city. But I believe within 2040, it's more or less 20 to 25% of people who are above 65 of age. So that's a big one. So CO2 emissions unfortunately still rising, which is a big influence on the city itself. And I think it's nice to know 32% of the people in Amsterdam are actually cycling.
Only.
Only.
It looks higher.
It's way higher, but it depends on just for traveling. So we see within Amsterdam, but I think in cities more extensively as well, we see different trends coming up. Big trend is, so I just plotted 5, there's some in there, so it's more or less 7 in total. I'll start with this one, where you see that ownership is almost history, not really, but it's going to be, because the whole phase is changing towards more like a sharing economy. It's the same with, you know what the sharing economy is? Or
US.
Yeah? Okay, so and Peerby here is a Dutch example of which you just, you have an iPhone application, you put in a request for example, a screwdriver, and everyone in a certain circle around you will get a notification and can borrow you that screwdriver. You can do it for bikes, you can do it for boats, whatever. There's no money involved, so it's just barter. I think a very interesting one is that you go from a more linear economy towards a circular economy. So products are designed to be reused, to be recycled, which is a completely different aspect. But also within the city, you start using all of the resources you have. So what we actually say is, for example, buildings can become resource suppliers instead of only resource takers. So try to create the whole economy surrounding this. You see, there used to be a very big physical flow of money. There were shops everywhere, which is becoming very more virtual within the city. Planning, social networks, and that also leads to it's becoming more of a less of a municipality center, but more of a community center focus, including a large part of decentralization. You see also it starts in January here in the Netherlands as well. There's a big part of the health budget, which used to be national government, which is now going to be deployed by given out by the cities. But also the budget decreases, and you see all different kinds of business models popping up, of actually new companies who start acting on this small new health change. And that's I guess also a big part of this is the consumer who actually starts becoming more and more leading, I guess. And the open and the big data. The big data for the analysis, there's tons and tons of data. I recently heard that just the last 2 days is the same amount of data which is generated in the same area from 2013 till way back. But also the open data is becoming a fun factor, I guess. Here, for example, I put a picture. This is the Vosjes Gymnasium. This is the electricity map of Amsterdam, and this is actually the electricity usage of the surrounding. So this is the building we're right now. The more darker the color gets, the less good it is. So there's a higher usage of electricity. We can do it for gas, we can do it for CO2. There are maps of, also all online, all open data, of the geothermal, how do you say it? Chance of finding real geothermal heat, but also for wind, for solar, with all the roofs counted, which is becoming a fun fact, especially if you look at, for example, physical places where you can connect all the different streams of data. Connecting, for example, within a shopping street. I'll get to some examples. For example, within a shopping street, you have tons of data flowing through that street, which is nice to interact with. So the Smart City program was founded in 2009, and it's actually a public-private partnership. So I actually work for Alliander. Alliander is in 1/3 of the Netherlands is the Dutch. It's a grid, electricity and gas grid operator. We're also, I have to get it out. Very active in, for example, energy storage, smart grids, and all different types of new solutions, innovative solutions. We have the Amsterdam Economic Board, which is, so together we're with 5 program partners actually within the program, I should say. Amsterdam Economic Board, which is it's an economic board here in Amsterdam. KPN, Dutch telecommunication provider. The Hogeschool van Amsterdam, which is higher education as well. It's not university level, but it's higher vocational training. And the municipality of Amsterdam. How we work is we work within a group. There's one mostly from KPN, the municipality Hogeschool from Alliander. There's just one of them in the program team, and there are more or less 4 or 5 from the Amsterdam Economic Board. Perhaps even 7. Together we're actually part of a project which is formally and legally underneath the Amsterdam Economic Board.
The Amsterdam Economic Board is a private businesses association or something?
No, it's set up by the municipality partly. The governance structure is that the mayor is actually the chairman of the board. But within the Amsterdam Economic Board, most of the businesses and knowledge institutions within Amsterdam are present. And actually their goals is, I think it's job creation and economic growth. They function as an igniter and as they have a huge network within the city and surrounding it as well. Yep. I should say, so there's a program team where I'm active in from Alliander perspective, and there's a steering committee on top of it as well. Where, for example, from Alliander is the director of strategy and the steering group. So what we do, very simple, but very diverse. What we do is we connect, we try to accelerate, and we try to act, always have a focus on acting and replicate. So what we connect is ideas, is companies, is people, and projects, just to see, because we always think there should be, especially if you look at more municipal or community value, there's always different stakeholders, there are always multi-stakeholder groups involved. What we try to do is align them, so get the different groups involved, align them and try to see if you can together create smart solutions, new technologies for companies, new products for example, but also new approaches. So within the city there's a huge area and there's a huge potential for testing and learning and try to see whether the new model, whether the new project, whether the new idea, the new concept fits. But it's even more fun when you look at replicating. So what we now do, what we have done is done almost 68 projects, but it's far more interesting to not necessarily look at how the project goes and how the project develops, but look at what is the concept within the project. If you can grasp it a little bit, so which different types of stakeholder groups are involved, for example, you can also see whether you can use this concept at other places within the city or within the Netherlands. That's actually what they say of just replicating. It's just don't reinvent the wheel, because others have done so. Yes. So we have, this is still in Dutch, we have more or less a couple of themes that we're focusing on and two big enablers, what we say. So the theme smart mobility, smart living, I'll give some examples on different projects and with different examples within the city that we do. So smart mobility, smart living, smart society, looking more into the environment, into the area, and the smart economy, more or less the accelerating programs, for example. We say these are possible, these can be made possible if you arrange this, and these are the big enablers. So big and open data, but also water, the roads, energy, ICT, the connectivity within the city. It's an enabler for getting teams like this to work and actually to use new technologies, to implement new projects and further smart in the city. So just to give broad examples, if you look at Ring Ring, for example, this is a project done all the way in Eiburg, so in the eastern part of the city, which actually people would get, this is standing for bicycle kilometers. So every kilometer the people would cycle to work or where else, they would get bicycle kilometers for it. It would be going into like a sort of fund or sort of a program which they could use to, for example, like use it as air miles, so they could buy goods from the local stores within the area they came from. Mobi Park, I think it's part of the sharing economy as well. It's a smart parking solutions. If I go to the city and I know where I'm about to go, I'll just go and open the app. I have one as well. And I'll tell I'd like to have a parking space somewhere there. They reserve a parking spot for me. So it's more or less private owned parking spaces. Traffic Link, the digital road monitor. They did it the first part in Eiburg as well. They built there was a sort of a new island made, and there's tons of houses put on there, but there was only one bridge accessing, or which you can access or exit the island. So what they did is try to see whether they could use all the traffic data of other people who are driving there as well to get everyone the most optimal road solution. And they now are, Traffic Link is owned by Trinité, by a company as well. And they're now actually looking into incident management as well. So how can you also use it for ambulances, fire trucks, and so on. Last part, so electric mobility is becoming more a hot topic. The Netherlands is more or less a front runner within electric mobility. If you look at what you can do with electric mobility, it's not just driving the car and implementing new loading infrastructure for the houses, getting the renewable energy from it. But what they did with Vehicle to Grid, this is a program which is now being used, done in Lochem, and so it's in, I think 2 hours drive from here into the eastern part. You can just use your car as a storage facility, which is being used right now as well. You can also unload your car when it's beneficial for you. So if, for example, you've loaded your car and the price, so they assume there's a far higher fluctuation of prices than there's now more or less a fixed price, day price, evening price. But if there's a continuous price fluctuation, which we think will happen like in a couple of years from now, it could be beneficial that in peak times, so it's between 6 and 9 in the morning, there's a peak in electricity demand, and there's the same peak in between, I think, more or less 5 and 9 in the evening. If you're willing to unload your electric vehicle, so your battery, and accept all the discomfort you get from it, you get a fee for it as well, because you're probably getting a higher electricity price than the amount of electricity you put in. So try to see if there's a stimulus in there as well. If you have any questions?
Yeah. And the things you have here, are these apps on the mobile phone? Or?
These two are.
Okay.
This one will be, but only the so only the part that interacts. Traffic Link is not an it's an But it's apps, but it's also websites. And
Okay.
everything. So it's all platforms and apps is just the mode of interaction. I thought it would be nice for the FOSSIs as well to use some smart living examples. Storage, I think it's a nice one. We're doing some storage project. There's one storage project in which we have multiple houses using individual storage, but there's more or less, there's also some people on the market who would like to implement the huge storage facilities. Try to see whether you can have smaller areas, and for example the harbor, put together and to see they generate. Try to see whether you can store it in a bigger storage facility. This is so they're now implementing it, I thought, in more or less 15 to 20 households to see what storage does, if it really works, if it's really beneficial, and what are the triggers which will ignite that storage is going to help for you. For example, the reduction, of course, of solar panels. I also like this example. This is Be Next. It's a smart home. It's built. There's a setup built with 60 forms of Demonica within the inner city, and it's all controllable. It's very expensive if you will install it at home, but it's all controllable from one device. But it also learns, just like Google Nest, for example. It also learns from your behavior, from your patterns. The time you leave the house, the time you're actually in the house, you prefer your audio on, off. You can also switch it. You can use it, but it also learns from your own behavior. Last part. That's where we're active in the western part of the city is actually, I don't know if this is common in Greece as well, but we actually denotate the level of energy efficiency within the house. Actually, we give it a sign. So A is perfect and G is pretty bad. So there's a project in which we try to see whether you can have 200 to 300 households increase at least 2 steps of increasing at least 2 levels upwards. And that's by energy efficiency measures, so isolation, I don't know how you call it in English, but double layer glass, for example, all those types of, well, we have, within the Netherlands, we have to reach a target from the European Union of about 14% in 2020 of renewable energy. We're now at 4.5%. So we're not doing very good in that aspect. But there's only it's only one side to look at like for example solar and wind power, for example. So the energy production side. But the other ones we're looking at is just saving energy to the utmost. Trying to see if you can start saving programs. Make people aware of how much energy they use, how much energy they spend, on the CO2 emission they create out of it. That's where also these maps were created for. Try to see whether you can stimulate people and actually, for example, we have one concept where we do it with sport parks. So trying to see if the buildings of sport parks, trying to see if you can reduce energy efficiency. And then it starts with a certificate as well. But then afterwards, there's actually, if you start implementing several, so for example solar panels, you start implementing different types of solutions, it's a positive cash flow for them. It has a payback period of about 7 years.
Awareness is one thing, but you have to get also motivation and penalties.
So the penalties, especially on this side.
At least in Greece, the only penalty is that if you don't get the certificate, you cannot rent the house or you cannot sell the house.
Okay.
But as long as you stay in it, you don't need the certificate.
No, yeah, of course it's interesting to look how the value chain works and how the supply chain works. So that's the other aspect. But yeah, there's trying to become more energy efficient is a big thing there. So smart society, I've just put up 2 examples. I'll start with this one. We actually did a small project within a small neighborhood called the Wildemanbuurt. which is a small area in Amsterdam as well, in Amsterdam West, where you look at how can you, we're making the Wilderman beautiful, is it actually saying? How can you, so it's a social innovation project, how can you, based on workshops, based on the needs of actually the people who live in the neighborhood, how can you start projects building on that? And how do you get them to be the project owners as well, but still helping them creating or trying to see where you can get other stakeholders involved, the municipality, but also larger companies who normally don't act on that small scale, and try to see if you can create a cooperation there. More or less a more difficult project. This one is part of the, which was actually started in Barcelona with the Smart Citizen Kit. We introduced it last year, this year. We just had 100 kids in the neighborhood where people could voluntarily apply. They would get a kit and they would have to hang it outside. And the kit would just measure all different types of temperature, but also measure CO2 levels, CO levels, NO2 levels, so all the air quality levels, sound levels as well, all different types of data. Trying to see, and we stopped the project because the sensors weren't good enough. The sensoring is a very tricky part of this. But if you can manage to build like a fairly good one, you can do all different types of fun things with it, I think. Because, for example, I think it's fun to use it. Here we have a large steel production site, where every now and then people are complaining about the air which is flowing from the plant to them, which might be polluted or which just smells or whatsoever. And this way you can give people actually a voice, try to see if they can measure it. And if there's really something there, it gives them a voice. If there's nothing there, it gives them at least a feedback that there's nothing there. So this is, and it's all open data. You can actually see where they're hanging on the maps. And so I think it's a very nice example of generating new sources of open data. Smart environment, two more. Smart lights. We have some smart lights installed now here at the Hoekenroodplein, which is next to a big football stadium where Ajax is playing. It's just regular lampposts. Actually, they're having there's two sides to it. I'll just say there's one side actually you can dim the public lighting, but it's based on sensory. So if there's people walking by, if there's a different, if the moon is shining very bright, the lamps can dim a little bit more. If the people walking by, it'll just lit up. And they're trying to see whether you can use the energy they're saving for implementing a Wi-Fi network or measuring also air quality or different types of usages. And the second part in there as well, there's also, together with Philips as well, there's also implemented different light colors. So you can actually use it for crowd management. So steering people from the big concert or from the football stadium into the right direction. And the red area goes to the parking lots, the green area just goes to public transport. But also use it, which I think, for example, try to see if there's a very exciting match or whatsoever, try to see if you can use the light to get a different mood on the square, for example. One part, this side, this is the site, this is their wish, this is their goal that it's going to be. They're actually 3D printing a kennel house. They have a printer here which has the capability of printing 2 meters by 2 meters by 3.5 meters. All, I think it's PP or it's all plastic still. This is the first part. It's actually part of a stair already. And they try to see, it's more or less, it's a big research project. You could use to visit it for free.
We were there on Friday.
We went,
Oh, you
visited,
went?
yes.
Oh, perfect.
Yep.
Nice, okay. So you liked it?
Yeah.
So we also has and they explained about Henkel and Alliander and all the different companies.
They did,
involved.
yeah.
Perfect. All right, it's good. So then there's
Bram,
Yeah.
your appointment is.
what time is it? Oh, it's
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so and this is his last slide. I'll just do it quickly. So focusing on smart grids, which is a big interest for us as well, for Alliander and all the applications you put on there. Smart heating, try to see where you can use, for example, sewage water, use it as a heat exchange. And the city dashboard, which is not implemented yet, but hopefully will be, to see how actually the city is operating and functioning. You can compare it with other cities as well. No,